The 1970s opened with financial problems at RB. Several attempts had been made to pass referenda, but all had failed. Pressure by the teachers for raises to a level on par with other suburban schools resulted in a short strike in September of 1970. In February of 1970, the Board of Education proposed several cuts in the number of class offerings, and other classes were to be consolidated. Faculty numbers were to be reduced by 11, and cuts in the library and guidance staff were proposed. Early dismissal of 7th-hour study halls would reduce the need for study hall supervisors. In January of 1970, 17 teachers left RB, a majority of them to work better positions at different schools. And on November 21, 1970, a referendum was again defeated. The faculty that had numbered 111 was reduced to 101 by 1972 because of the failed referenda. This situation resulted in elimination of low enrollment electives, increased class sizes, a reduction in the interscholastic athletic programs, and the reduction of extracurricular programs. The teachers and staff that remained tried their best to hold the educational programs together. Dr. James R. Trost was hired to lead the district as superintendent and principal in 1971. Although the district was financially strapped, his openness to innovation in teaching methods and dealing with finances boosted morale in the district. One of the first innovations was the development of new social science programs. Brant Abrahamson developed a course called Area Studies. It was a world geography course that examined cultures, geography, and history of several areas of the world. Students learned to appreciate and understand cultures other than their own. A second social science course was called SEM-SEN, short for Seminar-Centered American History. Studies were arranged by topics among which were immigration, war, politics, and labor. Students developed quarterly independent study projects in conjunction with the topics they were studying. In the early 1970s, the functions of the Library and Communications Center were combined. The Communications Center had long provided delivery of audio and visual equipment to teachers. Student aides also spliced broken 16mm films, changed lamps in projection equipment, and showed films in classrooms. Dawn Heller, who was the head of the library, proposed that it and the Communications Center join together to provide extended library and audiovisual services to the entire school. The new department would be known as Media Services. Luke Palermo, who had been working in a similar capacity at Lyons Township High School, was hired to lead the Audiovisual Center, as the Communications Center was to be known. A black and white television studio was cobbled together from some small rooms that had served as library offices. Soon, the AV Services was providing photography darkroom services, running thermo ditto masters, producing posters, spray painting and laminating signs, overseeing rental of classroom films, designing showcases, producing instructional videos, and working with students to produce class projects. The saying in the Audiovisual Center was, if one could hear it or see it, AV could take care of it. In the spring of 1973, consideration was given to a possible consolidation with another school district to solve financial problems. Lyons Township High School and Proviso were two possibilities put forth. The Governor's Commission on Schools recommended a certain property valuation per pupil for a viable school district. RBHS was well below their figure, because there was little commercial or industrial property in the entire district. In 1974, a 5-year curriculum plan was worked out. Many one-semester courses were developed to add interest, value, and flexibility to the course offerings. By March of 1975, the district was forced into deficit spending. The Board of Education was committed to retain as many courses as possible. Finally, in 1975, a referendum for building repairs was passed on the third attempt. Title IX became federal law in 1975. It mandated that no person in the United States could be excluded from participation in or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal assistance. Almost immediately, demands were made for girls' interscholastic sports, especially since the boys had recently received new uniforms. After 2 years of trying, girls finally got a softball team, but only on a trial basis. Soon, girls were participating in many interscholastic sports. Sectional, regional, and state champion trophies for girls' teams are proudly displayed in RB's showcases. The listening viewing area, which had been partitioned into 3 classrooms in 1928, was restored to 1 room in 1976. During study halls, students could use the facilities to review audiovisual materials they may have missed in class, or check out audio cassettes or cameras for projects. Area study classes made posters, and SEM-SEN students constructed their quarterly projects in the LVA. The theater clubs and drama classes have always been a big part of RB's activities, with abundant plays and talent showings from the beginning. But in 1976, the high school was the first school in Illinois to obtain rights to perform the blockbuster Godspell. In 1977, a small amount of construction took place. The swimming pool was deepened to allow diving. Electronic language labs, an updated auto repair shop, and a large metal shop were constructed. Enrollment began to decrease slightly at this time. In 1978, it stood at 1,750. Families in general were smaller, and Riverside in particular had an aging population. With the small enrollment compared to other schools in the West Suburban Conference, fewer and fewer athletic teams were able to maintain winning records. As early as February 1978, editorials in the Clarion were asking if RB should leave the conference. When the school board considered the proposal during the 1979-80 school year, they voted to keep membership in the WSC. Inflation severely affected RB, and to lower costs, hall lighting and heating were reduced, and lower wattage lights were installed in the gym. A grant of $30,000 was received in November of 1979 for weight training equipment to permit RB to participate in a study to determine if weight training could reduce injuries in the high school athletics. A series of big snowstorms during Christmas vacation in 1978 and into 1979 caused RB to close for a few days. The Clarion published student complaints that, after the snowstorms, the school opened sooner than those in the neighboring communities. The 1980s began a tough period for RB. Enrollment steadily decreased, while the aging building was in desperate need of extensive repairs. Referendum after referendum failed. Letters to the editor and the local newspapers questioned why the cost per pupil was so high. It was difficult for the voters of District 208 to understand that while the enrollment was decreasing, the expense of running the building was increasing, partly due to inflation and lessening state support. Some of the best and brightest faculty members were forced to find employment at other high schools. Classrooms that were empty were used for storage or offices by various departments. A teacher strike in the fall of 1981 lasted 10 days before the issues were resolved. The time would have to be made up in the spring, and fall sports teams were worried that some of their games would have to be forfeited. One bright spot in the 1980s was the Audiovisual Center. Western Electric donated color studio video equipment, and the black and white studio, which had been cobbled together from the offices in the old library, were no longer large enough to accommodate the new technology. The ceiling and some of the walls in the AVC were demolished, clearing the way for basic construction in the enlarged studio. It was pretty bare at first, but the ingenuity of the students and Mr. Palermo, their instructor, had it operating in no time. One of the first projects taped in the new studio was funded by a grant from the Humanities Council. A series of programs called Alone Together, conversations about relating, served as a basis for community meetings to talk about communications among students and adults. Metrovision donated cable broadcasting equipment in 1985, and RBTV was on the air, one of the first high schools to have a cable channel in the country. Centel, another cable company in the area, began to show programs that were sent to it on tape. Households in the community who subscribed to cable were able to view shows produced by the students. In 1982, with enrollment of 1,245 students, RB athletic teams left the West Suburban Conference. After a time in the Des Plaines Valley League, they joined the Southwestern Suburban Valley Conference. It was hoped that by playing in a conference of smaller schools, football and basketball teams in particular might have a chance to win more games. As the number of students continued to decline, in 1986, RB left the Southwest Valley Conference as well and became independent for a few years. The Suburban Prairie Conference followed, and now the Bulldogs are part of the Metro Suburban Conference. Illinois cut state aid by $36,000 in 1983 and $9,000 in special aid funds for the vocational education, special education, and textbooks were also eliminated. Many programs were mandated by the federal government but not funded, which left the state and the community struggling to finance them. RB was no exception. Already crippled by debt, the district was forced to make some hard decisions. When Dr. Charles LeCrone was appointed superintendent and principal to replace retiring Dr. Trost in 1986, enrollment had dropped to 1,045. 1986 was a very wet year. In October, the Des Plaines River flooded and the water backed up into the weight room in the lower level. Students worked at night to help sandbag homes in Riverside. The era of black plastic arrived at the school when the roof failed over the English wing and schoolrooms were flooded. Large plastic sheets of black plastic protected equipment and materials in many areas of the second floor. Repairs to the roof were crucial and took place over the next 3 years at an estimated cost of $1 million when fully completed. Through all the challenges, Bulldogs still found the time to have fun. Spirits were high and laughter abundant when a group of faculty disguised themselves as the Blues Brothers and performed on stage. Proms and homecoming dances were as festive as usual. In 1986, lights were installed in Shuey Stadium at a cost of about $10,000. Some residents of the neighborhood feared that the bright lights might disturb them during game nights, but an offer of free admission to the games for nearby neighbors soon quelled the objections. In November of 1987, a referendum was again defeated, but repairs had to be made. Beginning in 1987, some teachers were riffed each spring of every year until it could be determined how many could be retained to meet the next year's budget. In subsequent years, the teachers and staff became accustomed to it, and riffed teachers treated it as an opportunity to look for positions elsewhere. The decline in enrollment continued. By 1988, just 822 students were attending RB. 6 sports were eliminated that year. There was plenty of discussion as to which sports should be cut. Each of the sports had vocal proponents. The next year, the teaching staff was reduced by 13. In 1989, with funds non-existent for a needed student computer program, and with the television studio up and running, a telethon was proposed. 8 hours of live television included many musical groups from the high school and grade schools, and included a series of hosts from the faculty, Board of Education, and community. Their efforts and a hard-working phone bank brought in $25,000, which, with other donated funds, made it possible for the foundation to purchase the program. Annual telethons continued for an additional 8 years, bringing funds for grants to students and teachers for very special training that the high school couldn't provide from the taxpayers. They were temporarily replaced by phonathons beginning in 1987.